So like Bill mentioned, I split mine up into 2 blocks, and my first 2 weeks in the Condamine Centre in Warwick was really fantastic. I shadowed several really experienced rural GPs and I learned a lot. But in this presentation I'm going to focus on American Samoa because that's where I spent the money that I got my Rotary grant towards, because the healthcare supplies are obviously in more need in that area. And because the photos from American Samoa are a bit more spectacular. So I chose American Samoa because a friend of mine, Fee, who also does med with us, has a grandma who's Samoan. And so through her I had this bit of a connection, and we ended up going over together and living with her grandma while we were placed at the hospital. And this is the little house that we were living in with her grandma, and on the right there is her grandma, Sasa. And so I actually had to educate myself about American Samoa before I went over, and just briefly, because I didn't even know there was an American Samoa and how separate it was to Western Samoa. So there was Britain, Germany and the US all kind of engaged in a power struggle over those islands, and after negotiating with the local chiefs, I'm not sure how equitably, the US took over American Samoa, what is now American Samoa, and it's now a US territory, and they used it because it had a really deep harbour base which they used in the Second World War. So most of the income in American Samoa is still from the US government, and unemployment rates are really, really high. So I think they're around 50%, I read there somewhere, which is really interesting socioeconomic implications. And the influence of America is really striking when you go over there. So everyone drives those big American utes, and these are some of our friends who took us around the island, sitting in the back of the utes. No seatbelts in American Samoa. And also, unfortunately, the diet has become really westernized. So traditional Samoan diet is quite healthy. You know, you have lots of fresh seafood, the carbohydrate sources like taro, red fruit, green bananas, and they have an abundance of the tropical fruit. But unfortunately, that westernised diet's been brought in, and so now they have McDonald's, and there are lots of stores like this that are just chock full of really processed foods that are really nutritionally poor, and so as you can imagine, that has really negative health implications. Which brings me to my time at the hospital. It was called LBJ Tropical Medical Centre, and there are about 50 doctors working at the hospital, so it was quite large. And half were Samoan and half were, you know, from various places like America, etc. And they provided a free service. It was paid for by the US government, which was great, but it meant that it was just completely flooded all the time. So people from other islands would come to this island to take advantage of this free healthcare service, and the doctors were really overworked, and a lot of them were quite burnt out, which is a shame to see. Having said that, the doctors were really always open having us there, and really, you know, spent the time to explain things to us and answer our questions, which was really, really great. We split up our time so we didn't burden like one doctor too much, so we kind of hopped around in the different disciplines. At the bottom there we're with the internal medicine, and at the top is the nurses in OR. And there's no real preventative healthcare in American Samoa, so nothing like GPs that we have here. And there's also this cultural reluctance to see a doctor unless things have gotten really, really bad. So by the time that people did actually present to the hospital, things were so bad, like they spiraled out of control, and that was really sad to see. These potentially manageable conditions like diabetes just get so awful, like that they were having to have amputations or like treating really nasty recurrent skin infections. So that was, yeah, that was really sad to see. Yeah, just included this photo because although it seemed like a lot of people weren't taking good care of themselves, families really important in Samoa, and it was really nice to see in the hospital people's family come in, support them when they were sick, even to the point like where they lived beside their sick family member in the hospital, like bringing a little mattress and food and everything. Okay. So it is such a beautiful location. This waterfall was just out the back of the hospital. That beach was just at the front. We really tried to make the most of our time on the island and outside the hospital. And a funny story, like one weekend we went for a hike to a little bay, and we had it all to ourselves until a Samoan family came, and the mum got chatting to us, and we were asking her about like, oh, where should we go to the island, on this island, like where should we explore? And she said, oh, you really should go to the Manua Islands, which we'd heard about, like they just sounded like paradise, very untouched. And we said, yeah, we want to, but it's, you know, it's just very tricky. Like there's one tiny flight per week, it's very unreliable. We'd probably get stuck there kind of thing. And she said, oh, well, I'm going with my Rotary Club on a boat next weekend. And we was like, oh, and I just kind of slipped into the conversation that I got a Rotary grant. And so the next thing, we were just so lucky. We were, yeah, on our way to these beautiful Manua Islands, which are just, yeah, paradise for a weekend with the Rotary Club in American Somoa. We just thought we were so lucky. And oh, this is more of our travelling, but this lady here is Sandra, the Rotarian that we met, and her boys, and that was the island they took us to. They were delivering dictionaries to a school over there, so we did that with them, and yeah, just had a really good time. It was probably the highlight of our trip, actually. Yeah, and we just had this amazing Samoan barbecue on the beach, and yeah, it was lovely. So I had such a positive experience doing my elective in Samoa, and when I reflect on what made it so fantastic, I've realised it was because a lot of people have been really, really generous to me. So firstly, for you all, the Toowong Rotary Club for providing the grant that made it possible in the first place, and obviously the Rotary Club in American Samoa, and also the doctors with their time, with their knowledge, and just even strangers in Samoa. Like I was never hungry, I was constantly being fed, and people would drive me places, and yes. So I'm very grateful for that generosity, and I'm trying to take it on board and hope to be able to practice that as a doctor and as a person. Thank you.